All right, everybody, welcome to the War Room. You're in the real estate war room. My name is James Miller, and today I have with me Ramneek Mathur. He is what I like to call Renaissance man. He's an entrepreneur, a real estate broker, investment advisor. He's an author, and we're going to go and talk about him today. I'm excited to have him on. We'll talk about all of the topics, all of the things, right, Ramneek? And really appreciate you coming on today to chop it up in the war room on the war table today, and talk, and really get into it. So welcome on, man.
No, thank you. I'm really, really excited to be here. I really appreciate you inviting me on. I always loved, all of our conversations that we've had on the phone. We've always been like, man, I wish we just recorded that, So I'm glad we're finally doing it.
Totally, yeah. This is the realization of just taking action about the things that we always talk about, right? So and that's the thing that you're big on and on social media really talk about, and that's what I like about you. And everybody that I bring onto my show, we have this sort of common thread that we really shine because we love what we do, right?
Yeah.
It's really obvious when somebody's in the right job and when they're doing the thing that makes them fulfilled, because when they show up, it doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like effort, right? So that's something that I recognize instantly with you and everything that you do. It pervades. That's why you are not one thing, but you're all of these things. So let's I'm going to knock my mic over there. Q, for you to start telling me, I want to hear about, because you've got a podcast, you've got a book. Tell our listeners, we're real estate agents, we are loan officers, and we're lovers of life too. And so just talk to us. What do you want to talk about today?
Sure. Well, the main thing I learned pretty quickly in everything that I do is that, and it's the simplest phrase, but everything affects everything. And as soon as you actually internalize that, it kind of took me on a different path, even as a real estate agent and broker, as an investment advisor, as a life coach, and all those things, because, you may start out helping someone in the real estate business, buying or selling a home. But when you actually think about it, or if you pay attention to it, you realize you're actually involved in a lot of different things for that person in that time frame. And even though, yes, this is the particular transaction you're working with, if you have insight and if you show empathy towards everything else they're dealing with in their life, I feel like you can give better advice and you can give better direction on what they're trying to accomplish. And a lot of times, that may talk yourself out of the real estate transaction. But I figured out that, my name, if anyone ever sees my name, I wanted them to trust whatever I'm doing. And to do that, I had to be a more holistic advisor to people. So I went out on an intentional journey to kind of create these core competencies around investment management, real estate, life coaching, and all these different things, because I feel like they're not different things. They're all interconnected. And me having that kind of holistic approach to things, I feel like I can better serve people. And I don't feel like I'm necessarily in the real estate business. I'm in the people's business. And I feel like everything I do, my success all depends on my relationships with people, not necessarily actually real estate as a business. Because, in this day and age, you can look up anything. Any number there is out there, any type of statistic. It takes a quick Google search to figure that out. So I feel like the value that I bring is more of a holistic approach. I can really sit down with clients, and I enjoy doing it because I enjoy helping people and enabling people to get to what they're trying to accomplish. And a real estate is just one component of that.
Right. Man, it's so much to sort of unpack with what you're talking about in terms of what I like about the approach is, because I've seen this before, that with these different functions that they're typically in silos, right?
Yeah.
So you'll sometimes, I just saw it this week, an email come across my desk with advice from a financial advisor saying one thing, and the loan professional looking at this and going, what the heck, that doesn't make any sense. And so having the complete picture, you find that that's helpful, correct?
Oh yeah. And, in a way I'm a liaison between these different traits because, a client might read something, a statistic or some advice from a financial advisor or vice versa from a prominent real estate figure or something. And what does that mean in the context of that person? That is something that is a skill. And unless you understand where the information's coming from, as well as how you're presenting that information to the receiver, I don't think you can do justice and give the best service you can because you have blind spots. And in my own example, I always try to kind of translate what other people are reading and seeing and being advised to do into their own life and into their own context. Like, what does that mean for that person based on that person, their job, their career, their, geographic location, all those things. So being able to factor in all of these different, let's say like criteria without necessarily going into the weeds of it with people, like understanding these dynamics and kind of presenting that information in a way that makes sense to them. I think that's the biggest value anyone could give that person in the real estate field or even in investment management.
Yeah. So one of the questions that I'm sure that you get from people is, what is the value that you offer as opposed to someone else who's performing the same function as you?
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, that's actually probably the, especially right now, you could probably agree with me in terms of where we are in the economy. It feels like everyone is a real estate agent, and that's just like the fact right now because it's easy right now. And the reason it's easy right now is because things are generally on the up and up. It's very easy to close transactions. Lending is very lenient. So it's never been easier to close transactions and deals. However, relating that to a person and their individual context, I can't emphasize that enough. That's the value I bring. And I think everyone would be better off trying to bring that value to their clients because it's not about just getting the best purchase price on this one particular house or better seller concessions or what does that mean on your loan and all those things matter. Don't get me wrong. And negotiating is a huge part of that. However, advising someone to buy a home in a particular area versus another area or why not, or maybe you should hold off from purchasing that home based on their career intentions or maybe not. All those different strategies only come into play when you're more than just a real estate agent, when you're there for more than just the transaction itself. So having that holistic approach is my perspective. And I feel like when my clients talk to me, the one thing that they tell me, which always gives me feedback into that I'm doing the right thing, is that inevitably they'll say, no one ever really brought up these points that you're bringing up. And when people say that to me, I feel like I'm doing my job because it's more than just the typical real estate spiel. Anyone can do that. That's not really that impressive. What is a differentiator in this business is how much more you know and what you know and how you can apply that to that person, not what you don't know. So. Right.
It's really interesting that you bring up the point that people in the real estate business a lot of the time don't end up there because that was like a childhood aspiration, right? Like it was like not something you're like going, actually in our first episode, when we had Zach on, we talked about the same thing. Like I asked, why did you get in the business? And his response was kind of like, nobody ever really goes up and dreams about becoming a real estate agent. They sort of like back up into it, it's sort of because out of necessity. And so, the people who succeed are the ones who find a different approach, right? And I feel like what I like about you is that you have a different approach. And, like the question that I like to ask everyone who comes on my show
Yeah.
And I think I could probably start predicting the answers because I am bringing certain characters onto my show. But why are you in the business, Ramneek?
Well, you kind of answered it for me in a way, but I can give you some more context. I'm in the business because it's an integral part of my overall vision in what I like to do, which is help people. And like you said, I stumbled upon it myself. My background in academically is supply chain management, which is like logistics and business. At the time, I've been in real estate for 14 years now. I got my license as a byproduct of being in college, because back then you could get your license through taking several courses, and they overlapped with my business degree. So I said, why not? So it wasn't really intentional in the beginning. But then very quickly, because my background was on a career level was investment management, so I was an investment advisor, licensed and all that stuff, I started creating a book of business and a portfolio of clients that had investment properties and their own homes and whatnot. And inevitably, some of them would approach me and say, hey, can you help me with this? And my real estate business started becoming a supplement to my investment management business first. I wasn't a realtor up front. I never really even advertised that I was a realtor when I was first a realtor. And then it became a complementary service that I was providing to my clients. And then over time, it just became a referral business. And, only in the last 2 years have I really been doing intentional outreach to advertise that I'm an agent, I'm a broker, I'd like to help you and all those things. But until that point, it was a byproduct. And I realized it was like it was like one of those things where you stumble upon something that really helps you out. And I felt like having that real estate agent background and the broker background, I was able to better serve my existing clients. So that's where it started for me.
Mm-hmm. Since you're an author, I take it that you enjoy telling stories. And so
yeah,
do you have a story about a time when you worked with a client and you helped them through a situation and felt, and just very rewarded helping them get through something?
Yeah. There's two stories that I can tell, and these are not necessarily, I want to emphasize that every person is different, and this isn't something that happens all the time, but these are the kind of things that can happen because that's just life. One of them is kind of highlighting my investment management background back in 2012. You can remember, after the crash, that was the golden age of buying properties because you could get some killer deals out there. But I had a lot of clients that had portfolios of properties. I had one client that had over 15 properties here in Phoenix. And at that time, for himself, for whatever reason he needed to liquidate them. So me having an investment management background, I was like, well, how am I going to liquidate these so fast, as fast as he needs? So I actually started networking with, different hedge fund managers that I knew and different funds that I knew here in town. And I'm like, hey, do you have any funds that are REITs, real estate investment trust, funds locally that are looking to buy in these areas? I've got a spreadsheet, pick up whatever you want. And we were successfully able to liquidate 12 properties for him within 3 months. And not only did we liquidate them, but because, hedge funds and other funds look at things differently, they don't look at properties in the same way a person who's buying them for themselves would. They want to see certain yields. They want to see certain numbers. And I was able to kind of translate, these properties into those kind of formulas that they wanted. And he actually closed his portfolio, 20% higher than he was expecting because of that. So in that way, I felt like it was a great win. And I felt so lucky and blessed to have that investment management background. But that's not always the case, right? But it was one area where I'm like, you know what, I'm doing something right. Knowing something has benefited me more than not knowing something. And so that's one example back in 2012 that always comes to mind. And then the second example is more current, and it's kind of a testament, I think, James, you would say to yourself as well, you having that marketing background. lately in the last few years, on occasion, I'll do like a Facebook live walkthrough on different builds, like different developers that are in the area. Not always, but sometimes when I find like certain floor plans interesting. And, I was able to, as I was going through the house, as I was talking about the things that I think of when I'm buying real estate, I started getting messages from an old acquaintance that was watching my videos and stuff. And later on, 2 weeks later, they reached out to me and said, hey, I would like you to help me buy my house because, I know a lot of agents, including you, but the things you talk about in your videos when it comes to real estate is different than what other people are talking about. Like you're not talking about just the interior design and this and that. You're talking about the numbers, but how that also relates to the market. And I really think you can help me. So that was another area where I'm like, yeah, like everyone wants a pretty, beautiful house and shiny things are great. But at the same time, there's a pragmatism you have to deploy, and you have to know the numbers. You have to think thoroughly and critically about what you're doing because these are large purchases for people, So, and that was another time where I'm like, you know what, I'm doing the right thing. I'm in it for the long haul, and I am delivering value for my clients, whether I see it right away or not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think it really highlights your story, just highlights and underscores the idea that the educated buyer is the best kind of buyer. Right. And so being able to explain your process in a way, or explain your product in a way, or service in a way that people can understand it and feel like they can put that trust in you, then that carries a tremendous amount of weight, right?
Right.
So, I mean, that's really what it boils down to. And I think what I keep hearing you say and why I love this approach is that you're in the people business, really,
Yeah.
And everybody who I talk to that comes on the show, that really that's the entrepreneurs and the loan officers and the real estate agents who are coming on the show, that they really energetically understand what it means to have an alignment within your business and your, just having that perfect alignment with what it is that makes you tick,
Yeah.
And people who have figured that out, they're going to go and they're going to excel, and their clients that's going to translate. Right.
Yeah.
So, Manny, the last thing that I want to ask you before we sign off, or is there anything that you want for our listeners to take away, from this conversation? Is there one thing that you want to plant in everybody's mind that they should carry with them for the week?
Yeah. I kind of want to give two types of messages to people because I really do enjoy the life coaching side of my business too, because I feel like everything starts with your own perspective. One thing I would like to share with people is that everything that you're probably engaging with, whether you find it intimidating or overwhelming, especially during the holidays and whatnot, I'd like to emphasize that everything you're dealing with has an answer. And not to stress out to the point where, you're not able to be there for the ones you love and be there for the ones that mean the most to you, because everything can be intimidating. And the best thing you can do is seek help, seek advice from people you trust. One thing I've done in my business, and I always have to be the expert in front of my clients, but at the same time, I try to show as much humility as possible because I'm always learning as well. And my number one principle is I need to always be learning something new because it translates to better advice for my clients. And having that type of humility to seek help, I think it'll serve you well. And as soon as someone accepts to help you, they've taken an investment into you, and they've also, they're also going to serve you well. So if someone says, yes, I'll help you, that's a blessing, and take it. And, it's a way to give back. So during the holiday season, there's a lot of times when you're kind of, oh, what am I going to do for 2020? What's my vision? What are my goals and all these things? But everything has a solution. Everything has a path. Seek people in your life you trust and love, and you'll find a way there, and you'll definitely accomplish what you're trying to go after. You just have to go after it.
Absolutely. Thank you for that final thought, man. That's powerful. And it kind of reminds me of somebody who I know you admire and that we both follow, and everybody knows, Gary Vaynerchuk. He always talks about right? Yeah. Always talks about there being an ROI on happiness, and it's so true. Like, happy people in an organization or plugged into a movement or whatever it is, happy people keep the lights on, right? They keep things interesting and keep the momentum. So and one more thing before we go, because you brought it up, like I emphasize more than anything in my book and everything else that perspective is our greatest strength while being our greatest weakness at the same time. And one thing I'll tell people is, when you actually look at it physiologically, when you are in the most joyous state and when you're in the most stressful state, those are the two times when you perform the best. Like, it's science backed. Those are the times where, when you're behind, you're in a corner, you're going to perform really well statistically. And when you're in a very joyous state, there's no other stresses, you're going to perform your best. So having said that, try to seek a state of happiness and a state of joy before you go after your goals, not the other way around. You're not going to achieve a joyous, happy state after you've accomplished your goals. If you start from a joyous state, you're going to be able to accomplish your goal much more effectively. So absolutely. That's probably one of the most basic principles, I think, that's overlooked in business and in terms of people being success. And I think I've said this on every episode now, but that success doesn't make you happy, but happiness makes you successful, right?
Exactly. Yep.
I don't know who said that, but I'm saying it now.
Yep. Exactly. You said it. You said it, James, just now. Yeah.
But with that, Ramneek, Mathur, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you.
Very interesting discussion. I feel like we could go deeper on some neuro stuff, or
we will.
Maybe in another episode, right?
Yeah, we will.
But everyone, make sure that you tune in next episode. You can check out our website at therealestatewarroom.com/podcast for the show notes. And we'll be doing these episodes periodically. With that, thank you for joining us for this episode of The War Table, brought to you by the Real Estate War Room, our mastermind group where we share secrets and actually manage your marketing for you. Also, this is possible due to our sponsors, so I'd like to say thank you to the Premier Lending team, and they help us keep the lights on. Be sure to go again to therealestatewarroom.com. And everyone, have a great day. We're signing off.